power imbalance that us as males probably don't quite appreciate or quite understand is that we're not going into a situation where there is such a power imbalance that we're having to consider different options or different choices or to inhibit our desires and our wants because of potential risk or the lack of thought that I have about doing the things that I want to do in comparison to the daily constant considerations that females have to do and the alterations that they then do in their life because they're a woman. And that really, really struck me. One thing I do as a therapist is like, let's paint the future. Well, like if everything was amazing and perfect in your dream and you could snap a finger and magic ball, what would it look like? They haven't even started contemplating it. They're so stuck in the moment. It's a very powerful exercise to know what your future self wants and project onto it and start acting like it right here and right now. Well, the same thing with women in sport. We need a future self to start filling out and project onto and start living it now. Well, that's a very important role that the media has in women's development. Even if they don't achieve it, it's like, let's give them something to aim for. The most selfish act you could do is Welcome back to Expressions of Interest, where we break down complex psychological concepts, making them accessible and actionable. My name is Tom Greer-Smith, and I'm a performance psychologist, currently working with Surfing Australia and also working with a range of elite performers, both in sport and business. Today, I'm doing something slightly different, is that we've been doing solo episodes, but what I really want to do is actually do a solo breakdown of a guest episode that I've done previously. So I want to break down the episode I did with Dr. Jo Parsonage. She did an amazing job in highlighting a range of different issues for women in sport and women in science. It's such a pivotal and important issue currently in Australia, and I want to give it the due time and respect to not only work through and discuss some of the information that Dr. Jo provided, but also provide my lens and I guess my journey as a male, sort of working through and operationalizing this vast issue that we face right now in society. And not here to solve the issue, even to provide any solutions. I'm really speaking as a psychologist, but also as a male in society, to almost give permission for males in particular to have more of these conversations, more of these difficult conversations, because it's not just a woman's issue, it's a man's issue as well. We have so many women in our life, loved ones that we care deeply about, and to just reduce it down to men versus women and trying to balance out the finances of equal pay, it doesn't give the due respect to not only the complexity of the situation, but really how women are feeling in all of this. So that's what I really want to do is just give my point of view and to provide a platform to have more of these discussions, in particular as males. And it was a really interesting experience for me. The day after I did the interview, the podcast with Dr. Jo, I was at the WCL Snapper event, and I was walking to the event road, and I was wearing my Good Human factory jumper from Cooper Chapman that on the back says, "What are you grateful for?" And I think the jumper looks great. I want to rep Cooper's brand and all the amazing work that he's doing. But I had about 3 or 4 people come up to me and comment on the jumper and say that it's a really important message, that they want to appreciate and acknowledge what they are grateful for. And I had this one particular conversation with this lady completely out of the blue, just walking down the road. And she started to speak about the difficulties that she had in her life and that she really needed to see the message and the difficulties that her husband had been facing and that she saw in society, especially with men. She started off talking about with mental health. And, I mentioned that we were doing this podcast here and that we're trying to provide psychological information to people to help them understand themselves and the world better and help them thrive. And she said that it was absolutely amazing and how to watch more of it and everything like that. And I spoke to her about the conversation that I had with Dr. Joe and how much I didn't realize that there was so many disparities for women, not only in sport but in life. And she started crying, and she's probably going to listen to this actually as well, because it was a really moving moment that I had with her, because she said it's so amazing to hear a young male articulate the difficulties that us women have been facing for years. And, she's got young children as well. And she said, yes, we have these terrible things that have happened recently in society for people to step up and take notice, but people need to have more conversations of what it's like and the challenges and the difficulties for what it's been for women and in her life. And it was a beautiful moment because firstly, just this connection that I had with this complete stranger was a beautiful moment. And I thank her for her openness to have that discussion. But the deeper appreciation of what we're trying to do here, and that if I can just change or help one person's life, then, that's something worth doing. But I think what really struck her was that there's a level of awareness and appreciation of the difficulty that still currently women face in 2024. And yes, we've made some big strides forward, and that's fantastic, and we're going to keep moving. But how often have we actually stood back and asked the women in our lives, what's it like for you recently? And where are some of these imbalances still lie? And then I had a conversation with my really close friend that night, and she's overseas at the moment, and I said, I haven't actually asked you what it's like to be a woman, and is this really, really common that women are moving through society with fear? And she just pretty much, without calling me an idiot, was just like, yeah, we can't do the same things that you can do without the fear of different things happening or putting some things in place for us to live our lives. And that's not even getting into the topic that Dr. Joe was talking about around the inequality in sport and science, but just in general public. She's going, yeah, I have to think about who's walking behind me. I never have to think about that. Do I ever have to think about when I leave the house? No, I can leave at 1 a.m. I can leave at 6 p.m. It doesn't matter if it's dark or light or whatever. These are considerations that she has to make daily, because every single one of her friends has been catcalled, has been whistled out, has been made to feel uncomfortable. Not one or two, but every single one of her friends, everyone that she knows that's a female, has felt uncomfortable from a male in a certain situation. I think it's that power imbalance that us as males probably don't quite appreciate or quite understand, is that we're not going into a situation where there is such a power imbalance that we're having to consider different options or different choices, or to inhibit our desires and our wants because of potential risk or harm, or doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. And that was a really profound conversation. I think we spoke on the phone for a couple of hours, because I just had, in my naivety, just my unknowing. I had no real understanding of the disparity between the sexes of how I go about my life. And I think more importantly is the lack of thought that I have about doing the things that I want to do in comparison to the daily constant considerations that females have to do and the alterations that they then do in their life because they're a woman. And that really, really struck me. And so I guess what I then want to appreciate is how this then relays to what Dr. Joe was talking about and how women then have engaged with sport and science. And I think even before we go into the numbers, I think a really nice place to start is actually having a conversation with a loved one, with the female in your life, whether if you're male in particular, but just asking them, how are you feeling? How are you doing right now in this current climate? Like watching the AFL and there's a minute silence for all the women that have been affected by domestic violence. Yeah, that's probably a really good question or place to ask to your significant other, your sister, your mother. How are you feeling right now? And genuinely be open and curious of what their experience is like, and not, going straight into solutions like us males really tend to do. And it comes from well-intended places, but let's sit there and spend some time really trying to understand what life is like for the women in our lives. I don't know if in Australia we're in a slightly different cultural society. I feel it's fairly systemic worldwide. But actually having conversations and considerations for the people that are being affected, and maybe even some questions of what behaviours can I personally do to make the world better for you. That's a beautiful thing to consider. And it's going to be different for each individual, and that's okay, and we're not looking for absolutes. But what a wonderful question to ask your significant other is, what can I specifically do to enable you to live more of the life of how you want to and have the opportunity to live the life how you want to live? And if we look at that opportunity, and one of the big stats that Dr. Joe was talking about was that only 6% of female athletes have research exclusively done on them, meaning that I think she said, like 30% or so is done with both male and female participants in study in sport and science, but only 6 is exclusively done on females. And so getting verifiable normative data, which means we need a certain amount of data information to have a statistical understanding of what's going on, that's not quite there. If we've only got 6% of all the information out there is exclusive on women, how are we going to make data-informed insights into what is best for women in sport? Makes it really, really difficult. So what ends up happening is that we have a whole lot of data just on men, and we then try and use that data, that information, to help the female athlete. But as we know, there's a range of biological, metabolic, and psychological differences in males and females. So I think that's an important first bit that Dr. Joe spoke about, is that yes, there is hormonal differences in women, and we need to acknowledge that and work through that scientifically and statistically, but it's certainly not a reason to mitigate research on females. And then I thought another interesting statistic from that Dr. Joe shared with me is that for decades, women have received just 4% of media coverage as of 2023. And then, but however, in the last year, it's up to 15%. So it is increasing, all right? And why is that important? I think I just want to read this quote that article said at the end, as it says, it's predicated upon antiquated views about women's sport as fledgling causes or charities that have kept the industry confined to a restricted corporate social responsibility box. Now, what that's saying is that there's almost like this social responsibility that certain industries and organizations have felt to simply tick the box and to provide more coverage to women in sport and to do the right thing because that's what they feel is socially demanded of them. But that doesn't create a clear pathway for women to look forward to and succeed in sport. Because the important thing is, if you're only seeing, out of all the media that's out there in sport, 4% of all the media is female. What we do know is that it's very hard for individuals to contemplate a life where they're doing something when they never see that in society. So if a woman never sees really too many women on TV or succeeding in sport, performing in sport, how does that affect her self-efficacy? How does that affect the belief that she has in herself to pursue that dream, to go about and try and do all the hard things to do that? It's like, well, I've never seen anyone do that, and we model by what we see, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what is behind this sense of social responsibility? It's a responsibility to provide women the equal opportunity, just like men, to pursue their dreams and desires in sport. And part of that is giving them an image to look up to. I don't think that's really appreciated as much. And the same thing with we want to see more multiculturalism and more ethnicities on TVs, because if you've got a young Aboriginal person and they never see someone that looks like them on TV, why would they think that they belong on TV or that should be doing these roles of importance and consequence? They're going, they don't look like me. Why should I do that? How can I do that? Seems not normal. But if we normalize women in performance settings on TV doing these things, then the young girls grow up and go, that's something that I could do because I'm seeing someone else do that. So it's not so much about that there's this perpetual thing of that's not possible for you. We're actually talking about a very internal thing, that the individual, if she's never seeing the thing that she wants out there in public on TV, it's going to be very hard for her to conceptualize a future where that's possible. Now, historically, men have never really had to consider that the dream that they want is not possible. They see it in abundance around themselves. Do I want to play footy? Do I want to play cricket? I want to play rugby? I see it every single weekend. So I can then project my future self onto the individuals that I'm seeing. And that's such a powerful thing as a psychologist, is if I can't see a future self, then it makes it very hard for me to start taking the difficult steps in order to achieve that. When we look at individuals that are showing depressive symptoms, part of that is they're so held down by their current belief systems and their view of themselves that they have a really difficult time in contemplating a future where they're a different version of themselves. And that's one thing I do as a therapist. It's like, let's paint the future Like if everything was amazing and perfect in your dream and you could snap a finger and magic ball, what would it look like? They haven't even started contemplating it. They're so stuck in the moment. It's a very powerful exercise to know what your future self wants and project onto it and start acting like it right here and right now. Well, the same thing with women in sport. We need a future self to start filling out and project onto and start living it now. That's a very important role that the media has in women's development. Even if they don't achieve it, it's like, let's give them something to aim for. Another really interesting stat that Dr. Joe sent to me was women in elite sport will generate $1.28 billion in global revenue in 2024, which is the first time in history women's sport will surpass the 1 billion mark. Right? So it's not just about revenue versus profit and pure equality there. It has a huge economic impact on the world. It's a large growing economic potential too. And clearly people are consuming the product, slowly getting there, right? I think Joe said that Arsenal is having to now play their matches at the Emirates Stadium because they're at capacity at the local one, the women's Arsenal team, which is fantastic, right? The Matildas are selling out. Fantastic. So people are starting to consume this product, a different product. Let's not compare it. I don't think that's any benefit to anyone. But there's an economic role here that needs to be considered. And the equal conversation is not simply this product revenue, and this conversation isn't simply just a product and revenue one, because I think we get a little bit reductionistic when we just go, well, how much do the men make? How much do they get paid? How much do the women bring in? How much do they get paid? It's like, it's far too simplistic. And if we look at that, it's like, okay, well, let's look at these terms. Like we use the word equality there. What does equality mean? It means that everything's exactly equal and it's the pursuit of making things equal. Well, that's problematic because not everything's equal. There's a scarcity of resources on the planet. Therefore, making everything 50-50 is one, fundamentally not possible, but also is it the thing that we really want to be trying to achieve? Does everything need to be 50-50? You know, just naturally, if you've got two kids, does everything need to be exactly the same? No, it never is, because you've got a scarcity of resources that you can spend. You try and give them equal opportunity to do things, but it's not equal, and we don't consume that in our lives in that pure equal way. If we practice pure equality, it's like, how do you pick a song on Spotify? You just click go and allow it to choose whichever one. How do you choose the school that your kids go to? You know, whichever one's closest. How do you choose the restaurant that you want to go eat at? You choose the one that you like the best, and that you want to do there. So we don't practice pure equality in our life in general. No, we pick and choose the things that we like the most. And if more people like Taylor Swift on this planet than Kanye right now, then more people are going to pay for tickets to see Taylor Swift. Should that mean that only she has X amount of tickets to be sold compared to Kanye? It's like, no. People will move towards that. However, then you could fall down the trap of going, well, then if men have more bums on seats, they could get paid more. Well, the trap there is presenting pure equality in a setup the most fair and equitable thing to do. It's like, all right, if we look at an example and go, all right, we've got 4 people riding 4 bikes. If we want a purely equal setup, I have the exact same bike for all 4 people. And we've got a kid, we've got a grandma, we've got a dad, and we've got a teenager. Now, they're all vastly different sizes, lengths, physical capacity, endurance, but I just want to practice pure equality. I'm going to give them all the exact same bike. is that the fairest and most equitable way to do it? Is going, no, little girl can't touch the pedals. The teenager is 6'6" and his knees around his head. And the gears aren't working too well for the old dude, so he can't really go anywhere. And so we have a situation that, I was equal and gave the same bike, but only one person can really ride it. So what's the point of giving the same bike? Whereas if we look at equity of opportunity, is what Dr. Joe and myself were talking about, it's predicated upon that every individual within our advanced society has the equal right to an opportunity where they can pursue what they want to do. So in the bike example, we might have a smaller bike for the girl. For if it's a disabled person, they're going to be having a slightly different bike there. The bike changes, right? Because that doesn't mean that all of them are going to ride the same pace, that they're going to have the same outcome. But now, because the bike is tailored to that individual, they now have the same opportunity to ride the bike. And that's what we're advocating more for, is that how do we give women in sport in particular, take that to a societal lens, the opportunity to pursue their dreams equally. That equity of opportunity is important. And that's what Dr. Jo said. She says, I don't want to just be given a job because I'm a woman. And that's this whole conversation about quotas, which is not really getting to the point. It's like, that's almost degrading the value and the purpose. There's got to be some meritocracy to what we're doing, and not just giving them a position because of it. It's like, but do we need to promote some women to do some educational roles, to work in different coaching roles? Do we need to promote more women to play more sports, to provide more funding in here so that they have the opportunity to pursue what they're doing? And the fact is, at the moment, there's a massive disparity between the participation amounts of women in sport, the research in it, the coaching roles. I think something crazy like only 3% of Olympic coaches are female. Now, I'm not saying that it should be 50-50, but are we acknowledging that female coaches have an equitable opportunity to be a coach? Something to consider, right? So to take our bike analogy is, how do we make the bike of performance sport, elite sport, more suitable to our female athletes and to our female performance support staff? That's what we're trying to get at here. And I guess the question is, well, why that's important? Well, I think firstly, as men, how would we feel if we didn't have an equal opportunity to pursue our hopes and dreams? Probably not too happy, and we've just been privileged to be able to pursue essentially what we want to do, especially as white males. And so one, just as a moral sort of fairness point of view, but it's deeper than that. It's going, what does sport teach us and enable us to do? Sport is the greatest avenue, in my opinion, to teach all the lessons of life. In my mind, there's no better thing to provide a young child than sport, to teach them how difficult life is, to teach them about success, to teach them about failure, to teach them about how to be a team player, how to move through adversity, how to strive hard, how to work hard, how to have a sense of agency over moving through difficult stuff. If we just prop them up and just say, there you go, Johnny, I'm going to take the choice away from you and just do the things for you, open the door for you and all that sort of stuff, that's not giving them a sense of self-belief or agency that they can move through difficult things. So women deserve the same opportunity to participate in one of the greatest avenues to learn about life in. Now, and then the stats are very clear on the amount of organizations that hire and have a preference for ex-athletes. You know, if you look at NCAA in America, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, is like organizations will hire athletes. They'll be more likely to hire them if they've been a collegiate athlete. Why? Because they've just done all the things that I've just said. So providing females the opportunity to learn those amazing, valuable life lessons, develop their sense of self, not only is that a wonderful thing for them to do personally, it's gonna benefit society. If you have more females that have played sport, I thoroughly believe that they're going to be far greater participants in society. They're going to benefit society more. Anyone that plays sport is at any level is going to benefit society more because they've done all the things that I just highlighted. So giving the opportunity for women to do that. Now that's going to require us to initially put in slightly more money in different areas and to provide more opportunities. Yeah, it might cost a bit more to change the bike for the disabled person to ride or to put training wheels on it so the kid can ride. Yeah, that costs a bit more than giving the stock standard bike. Yeah, it's harder. Yeah, it requires a bit more effort. Yeah, it requires us to think a bit outside the box. But after a while, it becomes a bit more normalized. And then, yeah, the disabled person goes, yeah, I can ride bikes. There's disabled friendly bikes. Now I can do that. What a wonderful world to live in. So I think we really need to appreciate where we are right now as a society and go, this is an opportunity to create a better world for everyone to live in, not just women. Like it's like the most selfish act you could do is to be wonderfully selfless. It's actually going to benefit your life, in my life as a male, more if females play more sport. They're going to be better members of society. How cool is that, right? And I think me personally understanding that and appreciating that and really like having a deep reflection on why I've got certain views and why I think things should be fair and equal, and giving the time and space not only to listen and consider the circumstances and lives of the females in my life, but also why I had certain views on different things and where my blind spots were. Not an easy or necessarily that enjoyable a process. And I'm not here to make myself or anyone else feel guilty. Guilt is not the right setting or the right emotion for us to place on individuals. Sure, there was transgressions in the past, and it's not to reduce or ignore those that have happened in the past. It's more to start building what we want to happen in the future. And that requires a level of reflection. That requires a level of insight. It requires a level of permission for us as males to sit there and listen to the females in our life of how we can make their lives better. And just to begin with, what's life like for you? And just having those conversations and giving that platform to a complete stranger was an amazing, really deeply emotional experience. And thanks, Patsy, out there probably listening, is that had a profound experience on me. And I'll continue to learn and develop and try and listen. And I think, if anything, if get nothing from this ramble from me, is that let's give males in particular greater permission to have difficult conversations, to be able to listen to and explore what life is like for the women in their lives. And then just maybe we can understand and create a world where there's greater equity of opportunity for all. Thanks for listening, guys. Tune in for next week's episode. Thanks.